On January 9th, 2014, Mel came into the kitchen and said he was really thirsty, drank a huge glass of water and said, "This doesn't taste right." A few minutes later, my mom called and said, "Have you heard the news? There's been a chemical spill. You're not supposed to drink the water." And I said, "Well, can't we just boil it?" And she said, "No, the water is contaminated." So then they came out on the news that the only thing you could use the water for was flushing. I had a lot of anger because it should never have happened. And also because I have grown up in this state and there have been water issues around coal mining communities, there's a part of me that wasn't really surprised, unfortunately. And the other thing that struck me was, if this is really, really a bad experience, the timing is great, because our legislature is coming into session, and this is going to affect everyone. It's going to affect all the lawmakers, so they're actually going to listen to we the people and know that we have to make some changes in this state, that King Coal can't rule all the laws that are made.
Not only did I just drink a glass of water, I had taken a shower earlier that day, and something didn't feel right. Well, at that time, I didn't know, and I say that because what we found out is that our health was in danger, and that we were at risk, and the irony was nobody could tell us why.
Town meetings just started to spring up. People started to organize. We realized we had to address the legislature. It was also winter. It was freezing cold. We had,
after a terrible winter too,
a healing of the waters,
right,
like within a week. And we had a huge snowstorm and thought, oh, nobody's going to come out. Mel and I led a ritual there. And it was incredible. About 300 people came out in the middle of a snowstorm to protest the water. And first, the Capitol, whoever it is that's in charge, said we could not come into the Capitol building after we prayed down by the river. And then they decided we could all go in. So we all went in, and everyone was allowed to speak who wanted to.
Well, actually, part of that was that we do have some good relationships with some of the legislators, including the president of the council. And so he was anxious and concerned about that. And so they actually asked him to speak to the folks.
President of the Senate.
President of the Senate of our West Virginia legislature. And several of the other key congresspersons, especially Senator Unger, who's been a wonderful advocate for community-based issues and people. And so they ended up, so we turned the outside, after we were outside and did the blessing, we went inside and actually had a gathering and sharing our anxieties and concerns, and legislators who made promises. Kessler said, we will deal with this, we will be on top of this.
We ended up with Senate Bill 373, which has an annual inspection now required of all the storage tanks. And I was not happy that our United States Senator Joe Manchin came on air almost immediately, and our governor to say, oh, this has nothing to do with coal. Well, if there had been no coal, we wouldn't have had this chemical in the first place. They have this myth about clean coal, but there is no such thing. And the chemical they were using is to wash the clay and the rocks out of coal to make it usable to be burned. We, the citizens here, got a bill passed.
Huge effort. We've got some very powerful, wonderful citizen-based groups. And everybody says, this we're going to work on together, not just our own issue first, because water impacts everybody. And that became our mantra. What we said over time, over the weeks, is that water unites. We formed a kind of a water roundtable. We actually met, we strategized. We said we've got to keep the publicity on. We've got to get citizens, not just the usual suspects, in talking to legislators. We've got to get outside experts in because they'll try and hide it in the legislature. Go ahead.
There was the immediate crisis. We could not drink our water.
That's it.
So the state was arranging for bottled water to come in, and people could go to various stations and pick it up. And
we set up distribution centers.
There were distribution centers set up. There was one across from us at the fire station. But out in some of the more rural areas, people had volunteered and just filled up vans and cars and took water out to the people who didn't have a way to really get to a distribution center.
It was totally everybody across race, class, geography. It was the most comprehensive organizing effort I'm aware of.
Everyone drinks water. Everyone has to take a shower or a bath. I mean, it affected everyone.
And that's water unites. I mean, it really became true. And then the other thing is that people from around West Virginia were bringing stuff in. So even though this is a 9-county area with 300,000 house members, people from West Virginia would say, what can we bring? They bring water, they bring food in, because you're realizing in some of these places, the other thing that happened is, as they kept going, the schools were closed. They'd already been closed significantly for several weeks because of the weather. Well, a lot of the kids in this community and in our communities depend on school lunches for their foods. Often that's all in the healthy meals some of them get. So not only that, we had to close the restaurants because we couldn't use the water. So the workers, who often live in paycheck to paycheck or tip to tip, their lives were radically changed. So we've also focused on a comprehensive approach to try and get water to people, try and make sure people could feed their kids, get diapers. I mean, we did a major thing in a short period of time. I mean, now I will say the National Guard was really helpful in getting water in and distribution.
But at one point, nobody knew what to do with this chemical.
Right.
Because it was never supposed to be ingested by humans in the first place. So they tried to work out a formula to know what would be a safe level. And the only thing they could find was what had killed rats. So then they extrapolated from that to a 160-pound male to figure out the least amount that would be, quote unquote, safe for humans. And the first round that came out, they said it was 1 part per million. Well, when they got down to 1 part per million, it still wasn't enough. They did further testing and got it down to, I think, 2 parts per billion is acceptable.
And then the issue was they were measuring from the water source from the, oh, by the way, the company that did this is Freedom Industries. That's the name of the company. And then the American Water,
West Virginia
American Water was a treatment plant. And so Freedom Industries, about a week into this, filed for bankruptcy. And so they were getting out of their responsibilities. A couple weeks later, they actually formed another group. So there's all this legal stuff going on.
But they also had this was above the plant on the Elk River. They also had a plant in Nitro, which is just down the river,
right.
the Kanawha. So they were just going to move all the stuff from the Elk River one to the one in Nitro.
But those containers weren't safe.
But those containers weren't safe either.
So we got that stopped.
So then they were moving it to a place somewhere in Pennsylvania. But it raises all these questions like, what are they doing with this stuff when they move it? We just had a storm here last night which caused the overflow at Freedom Industry. So more MCHM has leaked into our water supply again. They're cleaning it up, but it's like we don't know where they're taking all the stuff that they're cleaning up. They took some of it to Hurricane, which is about 20 miles down the river. The Hurricane landfill sued not to accept it, so they've taken it somewhere else. But I think people need to understand you can't just throw things away because they always stay with you.
And part of the anxiety about this, I think, was that we found that they had supposedly built this containment trench. They had a leak. They blamed it on the fact a hole had come in. But they're supposed to be inspecting this stuff. But when you find a containment trench is full, when you find that there's a sandbag on top of the thing, somebody had tried to do something. So then to say we didn't know anything about it just didn't hold water, so to speak. And so it enraged people. And the fact that we kept asking what's in the water, and it turns out it's 4 MCHM, which in fact it's multiple chemicals, so it wasn't just one. And there's some very dangerous combinations. We still don't know everything that's in it.
We still are not drinking the water. So it's 5 months later, we're still using bottled water. We have a lot of the restaurants put in whole water filtration systems within their business. We're considering doing that for our house.
But what we did, Jan, I'm going to go back. What we did is we also said to citizens, we shouldn't pay for this. So we led an effort, we had a big protest for folks to say not pay your bills, not pay your water bills, or file protest to say you want to protest what happened. And that has led to a whole investigation by the Public Utilities, Public Service Commission. And we've also got folks for the federal coming in overseeing. So we got to be on the politics of West Virginia. Even though the legislator did their thing, how is it going to stay enforced? The lobbyists will come back in when they think everybody's back drinking the water. So we went to the next level, and we got eyes on West Virginia now. And in fact, the irony is that then Manchin, who'd been fussing, has now created and proposed legislation nationally to ask people to know what's in their above ground containers. And that's, because we were the first. We were poisoned. I want to be clear. We were poisoned. And we still don't know the long-term impacts of what happened to us.
And part of the Senate bill is to do long-range health studies.
We actually we also brought in some citizen-based testing groups. And so we weren't trusting some of the other folks. And then a couple of them actually got hired later to actually do stuff for the state. And so we have several groups that are testing the water. They've identified the fact that we don't have good regulations. We were surprised and shocked to find how few chemicals we know anything about or actually been tested for the impact on humans. So this is a national issue. And that's part of the story we're trying to get out. We're asking people to ask, what's in your water? We think that water, you know, we talk about coal is gold in West Virginia, and we used to count it and say, and water is platinum. That it is something that we can't live without and have healthy lives with. And so therefore, clean, safe, healthy drinking water should be a human right. It should be a human right. And those who violate that should be duly held accountable and punished because it's threatening our humanity.
Well, it's actually threatening all of life, not just
Well,
human
that's
life.
right. That's the other thing. Thank you. Because our interdependent web, and we've been clear about that, because we had dogs. We made sure animals were taken care of in this too, because they were endangered as well. And I think the other thing is that how we as citizens have abdicated our responsibilities to hold our government officials accountable for the safety forces. Like we said, around this country, extraction industries poison our environment in multiple ways. And unless we hold them accountable, unless we hold the legislation and legislators accountable for protecting us, this is going to increase.